foolish that are going to wreak havoc for many, many years to come. That's what he's doing. We have to wake up. You know, you talk about the chokehold. Chief, come on. The chokehold is the least of the problems we've had to deal with when it comes to the police over many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a desperate people now. And desperate people, they get foolish. I think what we're witnessing now is a lot of foolish, desperate people. They're trying to do everything they possibly can to slow down the growth of black people. But we have to wake up. I would say to you all, you have to let your listeners know. We must continue to believe that our glass is half full, that we are going to win this battle. But we got to make it, we got to understand, it's not going to be won by, we have to do the work. We've got to put the work in. We've got to start paying attention to what's going on. You know, let's not, with just a bit of humor, I enjoyed watching The Resident of 1600 today. I did. I listened to him and I said to myself, he is a damn fool. But nobody could tell anybody that that's something he had to do himself. But we've got to pay attention to it. Because the desperation, that's what he's spurring out to all of his people. He's gone as far now as to say, I've got to do things for my people. Okay? This is not a game that these folks are playing. When we talk about 401 years, think about the math. What is that? 2 generations maybe? In the scheme of things, that really wasn't a long time ago. You're talking about maybe his father and grandfather. Do you know the things that they taught him? Can you imagine where his grandfather was 120 years ago? The things that they taught those children in their house. But even on your talk show, you've got to talk about what is. We ain't got to stop kind of complaining about what was. We've got to start telling people to open their eyes. And whatever you see, it's real. Don't try to dress it up into something else. People say, oh, you know, he's just unintelligent. No, he's got messages he's got to get out any way that he can. And he realizes he does not have a long time to do it. How do you think he told these whoever these law enforcement people were, spray them with tear gas, hit them with the rubber bullets? He knew what that was going to do. He knew it. But we have to be smart like Mayor Bowser was. So she said, okay, that's the game you want to play, so what did she do the next day? And 20-foot lettering down the middle of the street that he had to look at every time he looked out his window, he saw Black Lives Matter. That's how smart we have to get.
Yep.
We've got to talk to our young people. I said this when I was on the air before. We've got to take the time to talk to them and make them open their eyes. They're not playing a game with us. Here in the county, we had a chief that just packed up his briefcase, got his thermos out of his drawer, and went home. Because he knew that that case that was filed in federal court was going to bring about some ugly things. Now, the word on the street is, he was told, you might as well pack up and leave. Because in this environment, this is the last thing that we need. But you've got some good police chiefs across country too, Chief. And they got a mess on their hands. They got these guys that got these hoods and these sheets under the spare tires of their cruiser. They got to find out who these people are. And they got to out them. They have to. But again, I reiterate, we've got to be smart. We do. We've got to wake up and be smart. You in Finbad, You got to use this time to get the message across to people. It's not time to be mad. It's time to get angry. We have to get angry. And we have to be willing to do something about it. We got to vote. You also went on to Kentucky. I haven't seen it. That hasn't happened since what, 1940 or 1950? Do you think they're playing a game? And do you think Mitch McConnell really cared that people knew how wrong it was? It did not matter to him. It didn't matter. But I was pleased to see those folks getting ready to knock the door down that voting place because they wanted to vote. And so you had a judge who told them you will open the doors and you're going to let these people vote. But what would have happened if they had not banged on that door and demanded to be let in? Suppose they just became passive and turned and walked away. That's what we have to look at when we see these kind of things. That is the energy we have to look at. We've got to start thinking. We got to get away from that fairy tale Rip Van Winkle, get up from that oak tree, and get involved.
All right.
That has happened. But again, you don't have the platform. You can talk about these things, but you got to tell the people the truth. You got to tell these preachers. I keep telling you all, Harold Melvin said he knew something we didn't know years ago. Preachers got to start preaching a new way. The teachers have got to start teaching a new way. We got to wake up. Because if we don't, I said to you last week, James Baldwin made it clear. It'll be the fire next time. And you know, fire don't care who it burns. It does not make a difference. Let's win this battle. Let's feel good about where we are. Let's look at our glass as being half full. Let's think of ourselves as we are about to overcome.
All right. All right.
Back to you all.
Thank you, Phil. As always. Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess the doors of the church are open now.
Yeah, well, we knew what we needed to do. Phil would do it. You know, it's funny he mentioned Mayor Bowser and you know, no one was expecting, you know, there to be like Black Lives Matter painted in the street, but you know that stuff is caught on because in Fayetteville, North Carolina, they're talking about doing that around downtown Fayetteville, which is not that big, but in the downtown Fayetteville, there is a place. There's a traffic circle, and at that traffic circle, there's a building called Marketplace, and it is a historic spot. It had a little fire damage during the George Floyd protests, but it is a place where slaves were sold. And it's now a traffic circle that goes around it. There are those calling for it to be torn down. Black folks are like, okay, let's tear this thing down because it may be historic, but it's not a history that we want to relive. And of course, obviously, they're being met with some some resistance.
Well, Thinbad, what are your thoughts on moving these Confederate monuments and names off plaques and pictures? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think it's only part of part of what needs to happen. You know, there's you take it down. But what do you replace it with? I mean, not that you have to replace. You have to put up, you know, take one thing down and put something else up. But what do you? So we take that down, and how do we do something other than that? No, another. I don't mean, you know, we take a Confederate statue down and put up a Black Lives Matter sign. But I mean, what do we replace that with? We pull that that racist stuff down, and we replace it with what? Do we replace it with a different school curriculum where we start learning differently, where we start teaching differently? Do we replace it with some other form of something? Because I tend to like statues, and so I look at them, and now I'm looking at them, quite differently. I'm looking at all these names and how they're set up, and I'm like, a lot of these Confederate statues are really people who stood against what America is supposed to be about.
Right.
So, to defend it, to say that it's your heritage. Well, so is your heritage, how much of your heritage can it be? And who wants to have a heritage that part of their heritage is well, we want to fight. We were fighting for the side that said we want to keep people. I mean, I just don't know how you. I don't know how you fight for that.
Well, and you and I have talked about this on many occasions, and one of the things that we've all said almost in unison is when you look at the Jewish community, particularly in Germany. There are no Nazi statues and flags flying and people saying, well, that's part of our history and heritage. And it's difficult for me to understand that people can't see that was the same level of fear and oppression, if not greater, than you saw, during World War II. Now, of course, the Jewish community was almost obliterated, due to the gas chambers and so forth. But slavery was equally as horrible. I mean, you were brought against your will. You were transported in conditions that no human should be subjected to. Literally for 2 or 3 weeks, you're laying side by side, head to toe. And if you have to defecate, you do it on yourself. It was a mess. And so I can't understand what type of pride that instills in people to know that the Confederacy represented slavery, oppression, and death for millions. I don't understand. That's not anything that I would be proud of. Now, I'm sure you'll have some folks that'll jump up and down, but let's keep it real. If they were on the other side of a history that was wreaked in oppression and deprivation and degradation, I don't think that you would get the same response. And then at the end of the response, God bless America.
Right. I mean, because they didn't want to be part of America. The Confederate folks didn't want to be part of that.
Absolutely.
So you've got this flag. It's American flag.
Yeah.
And then you got this Confederate flag. So they're flying that flag and not flying the American flag at the same time.
Right.
But they're choosing, okay, I've got a choice. I can fly either flag. I'm going to fly the Confederate flag. So you're pretty much saying,
right,
you don't want to be
part.
America's not something that you're really interested in.
Right.
You're not interested in all of that coming together. And there's nobody is really North or South is really free because they had slaves, folks picking cotton, doing things like that in slavery. But who were they picking it for? And who were they're picking the cotton for the textile mills that were up north.
That's right.
So the northern countries, the northern states, they had an indirect effect. Obviously the southern states had the direct effect because they were cracking the whips. But they were cracking the whips because of the demand coming from the northern states.
Well, and then when you look at the lasting legacy of slavery, the deprivation, the degradation, the lost opportunities, Juneteenth represented that for 2 years